apparently you're not happy with the direction of Disney and Bob Iger.
When it comes to the proxy fight for board control at the Walt Disney Company and CEO Bob Iger, Nelson Peltz of Trian is back.
We love Disney, and it saddens me that the board didn't welcome me.
He's pissed.
We went, 7 of us from Trian, went to Disney World. All the employees were smiling, and that's probably in large part because they didn't own any Disney stock.
And he's brought friends.
Hey guys, I'm the largest shareholder in this company.
Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video that are not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern right here for the live show. Just yesterday, Nelson Peltz did an interview on CNBC talking about his proxy fight with the Walt Disney Company, trying to acquire 2 board seats, one for himself and one for former Disney Chief Financial Officer Jay Rasulo. And one of the first questions out of the gate from CNBC was, Nelson, what's wrong with the board they've got now?
This board, from Bob to every independent director, has underperformed the S&P on every measure. 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. How long do we have to continue to suffer with this great board?
You gotta love a guy like Nelson Peltz. He really doesn't pull any punches. He tells you exactly what he's thinking, and he has no problem sitting down and being challenged on this whole endeavor.
You know, we love Disney, and it saddens me that the board didn't welcome me, because our goal is just to work with them, to help them, and to help them make the company better.
Nelson Peltz and Trian have a long history of being active investors in the companies they take positions in, meaning that they want to be involved in the overall broad scope decisions the company makes, things that would be set forth by a board of directors. And they've been on the board of directors of many of the companies that they've been active and taken positions in over time. Disney's really no different. Nelson Peltz is not involved in Disney because he wants to sit back and take a passive approach and just hope and pray that Bob Iger and his goons on the board that will rubber stamp everything he does will suddenly make things better after, as Nelson Peltz puts it, underperforming the S&P 500 for 10 years.
They said I have no media experience. I don't claim to have any. But I would tell you, I don't think they have much media experience.
Ouch. And what exactly do you mean by that, Nelson?
They broke a record this year. You know that the last 5 movies in a row were losers.
Oh, somebody's been watching some Disney box office videos on YouTube.
Now, if that comes with media experience, I want a guy who doesn't have a media experience. I made a run at them last year. They promised they were going to improve things. I took them at their word. Things got worse.
It's funny, we've actually brought that up before here on Valliant Renegade. For all the stuff that Bob Iger talks about, how Nelson Peltz doesn't seem to have the chutzpah, the gravitas, or the entertainment industry experience, whatever garbage excuse that Iger has wanted to throw out there to folks over the last 18 months since Peltz started this, is all for naught. If you look at the makeup of the Disney board itself, virtually nobody on there really comes from any media experience background. But, you know, I kind of think that's the way Bob Iger likes it, and I think Nelson Peltz knows that. Because, again, who is going to question Bob Iger, the unmitigated king of media, at least insofar as places like Hollywood is concerned? And this is why the board just lets him do whatever he wants to do, and that's been exactly the problem at the Walt Disney Company that people like Peltz want to fix.
7 of us from Trian went to Disney World. All the employees were smiling, and that's probably in large part because they didn't own any Disney stock.
Damn, Nelson. But the thing is, he's probably right.
This company is just not being run properly. The board oversight is awful.
Now, there's more to the interview that we'll cover in the live show on Sunday. There's a lot of fun stuff in there, so stay tuned for that. But Nelson does go on to talk about some of the external threats to Disney right now, namely the fact that he does not believe that Disney is positioning itself wisely to stand up to competition that is coming eminently from places like Universal and Comcast, specifically Universal Studios in Orlando, opening its Epic Universe. Disney seems to have no answer to that. Universal, of course, is also opening up other parks in places like Las Vegas and in Texas. Smaller parks, albeit, but parks nonetheless. Disney announced earlier this year that they were going to spend some $60 billion in capital over the next 10 years to expand their physical footprint with parks. But seemingly, almost all of that capital, if not every penny, is slated to be spent outside of the United States in overseas parks. And Disney parks in the U.S. seem to be, frankly, languishing. And while Disney can't really expand very much when it comes to Anaheim, California, and Disneyland, they do have plenty of space to expand in Orlando, but right now seem to be choosing not to, probably because of the stupid political and courtroom fight that they engaged in with the state of Florida, the governor, the legislature, and quite frankly, the vast majority of voters there. Nelson also talked about some of the issues with peeling off pieces of ESPN right now, saying that why didn't Disney do this a few years ago when they would have been in a much greater position of strength? In other words, Disney would have been able to command higher prices for these shares they're spinning off, reportedly to places like the NFL and possibly even another small minority stake to the NBA. Time will tell, and we'll also talk about that later this weekend. But now they're doing it in 2024. When the whole issue of linear broadcast in its future and how long it can continue to go on at this pace is really in some serious question. Not to mention now the much higher prices being commanded by the leagues thanks to higher salaries to players and everything else that goes with it, that's making it more financially untenable for any broadcaster of live sports to continue going down the same path they are, particularly with cord cutting. The transition to direct-to-consumer in ESPN, well, that's going to be a rough road at best, and we don't know what that's going to look like. So Nelson Peltz sees this move by Disney not as an act of repositioning itself wisely, but more of an act of a fire sale and desperation, considering the timing.
Hey, guys, I'm the largest shareholder in this company.
But are you? I mean, Ike Perlmutter is. I still don't fully understand.
Really? David, what's the difference if a guy gives me a check or he gives me shares? I have the full right to vote it, to do whatever I want with it.
So let's talk about what Nelson Peltz is asking Disney shareholders to do in 2024. If you recall, about a year ago, we were talking about this very same website from Trian and Nelson Peltz, and that is restorethemagic.com. After Disney and Peltz concluded their battle in 2023, where, again, as Peltz reminded us in this interview with CNBC, that there were a lot of promises made. Few of them were kept. But of course, the stock price hasn't done any better for Disney, and Bob Iger's leadership is still Bob Iger's leadership, especially after Bob Iger was renewed for another 2 years over the summer, just a few months after the proxy fight concluded, meaning that there was no succession plan in place. And of course, this is one of the things that Peltz is looking at. But everybody can go to restorethemagic.com and see exactly what Nelson Peltz is talking about. And again, we'll cover this in more depth on the live show Sunday. But one of the most damning things on the front page in black and white is Disney's returns compared to the overall S&P 500 and Disney's self-selected media peers. Just look at the 10-year return. Yes, there's a problem at Disney. And that doesn't matter just that they're the biggest kid on the block that loves to sell the story of biggest theatrical footprint each and every year or biggest theme park attendance. What is the actual return to shareholders? Well, not that good. And he even throws in a quote from Elon Musk. Quote, brutal track record. Shareholders have been incredibly poorly served by the Disney board back on January 18th. And it kind of makes you wonder, is Elon Musk still going to try something fun with this proxy fight? And be that as it may, when the ballots come out from Disney, Nelson Peltz is essentially asking folks to suspend their votes for the board of directors that the Walt Disney Company puts forth, or in other words, the ones that Bob Iger puts forth. Abstain from voting from them altogether, and he is asking instead for Disney investors to use his special proxy card that will be delivered from Trian. And on that card, you'll have a choice to vote for Nelson Peltz and former Disney Chief Financial Officer Jay Rasulo. Recently, we made some Valliant Renegade merchandise that's available over on MixTees. We'll leave a link in the description below. But we also made the tongue-in-cheek hashtag Walt Right merchandise. And you know what? There's probably nobody more Walt Right than Nelson Peltz and his crew. And what that means simply is they'd like to see Disney become again what they used to be. The amount of intellectual property and the actual physical property they have, they should not be suffering as much as they are financially. They should not be having the kind of trouble that they have been having in the box office or in the streaming wars that they are. It's simply a matter of bad current management that is not going to magically change overnight with the same people running the ship next year that are there this year. And the bottom line with old Bob Iger is simply this. He fears his legacy being disrupted. He does not want anybody else coming into Disney undoing what he's been doing, regardless of how well or how poorly it's worked. If you need proof of that, just look at how long Bob Chapek lasted before Bob Iger forced him back out the door to get Bob Iger's self back into the CEO position. People like Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo are not the kind of board members that Bob Iger will tolerate in the boardroom, because they are exactly the kind of board members that the Walt Disney Company needs right now. People that will not rubber stamp Bob Iger. People that will question what Iger is doing and what the board has done up to this point, and actually try to do things differently so that Disney can get back to its old glory days in terms of its performance. But Bob Iger's ego is simply too big to allow anybody to question his judgment. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Nelson Peltz is going to be successful or not? Do you want him to be successful or not? I want to hear from both sides of you on this. And make sure you're subscribed to Valliant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.